Alright, we're out here today and we're going to start on BuildShield. So a couple things to get started. Gloves are an absolute must. Even if you're a tough man like me who doesn't really like to wear gloves, even though the internet commenters say so, this stuff has these sharp edges that will absolutely cut you to pieces. It's just not, there's just no negotiating this one. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to start out today by doing some corners. That's the hardest part. You always start from the corners and work inward. In order to do this, we're going to need some knives, cutting shears, and pencil. And the first step is going to be to measure out a 2-foot section. It's not critical, this is exactly 2 feet, but that's just a good length to start with. So since I'm doing a lot of corners on this house, I've gone ahead and made a template. You'll see in the instructions there is a cutting template. I've just made some marks here. In this case, this solid line is my 2-foot mark. I find that an X-Acto blade actually cuts this really nicely. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut 2 pieces, one for each side of the corner. There we go. Now you'll see on this product that there's 2 score lines. The wider side needs to always go to the outside. You'll need to pay attention to this when you're cutting them, because depending on whether you're doing an inside corner or an outside corner will change which direction this goes. Alright, so in this case, let me check and see what I'm doing. I absolutely have no idea what I'm doing. Don't tell anybody I said that. Alright, we're doing an inside corner today. So that means that the shorter sections are going to be this wider stuff. So we're going to lay this out on my template here. First measurement is 1.25 inches. Just mark that right there. Second measurement is 2.5 inches past that, because that's the thickness of the ICF. So that makes it 3 3/4. And then again, you can use cutting shears. I actually find that a knife works really well for this. Alright, you can see where all these sharp edges come from. The next thing I do is I just keep a bucket and I put all these scraps in here because you will need them for patching later. Alright, so the next step that's really important is you make sure that you cut the other one the opposite direction. So this one I've cut in this direction. Again, making sure the wide side is up. And I have equal marks on the other side of my template. 1.25 inches plus 2.5. And what I have found is that doing this in production style, I have a little box corner set up right here on my workbench. And I cut and build all these out here at the workbench, and I just take them to their final location later. Alright, the next step to do is you'll see these score lines here. You can actually see the score lines on the back side as well, and that'll come in handy in just a minute. Alright, so the next step we need to do is crease these on the lines. The silver side goes down. So there's a couple ways I found that work well. One is on the edge of a board. I'll just line up this crease that you can see through the paper. Take your time here. It's important that you get this right. If you have somebody on your crew that likes to do origami, the paper folding, you know, little cranes and stuff, they're the right person for this job. Alright, so that's what you get. I'll show you another technique that I like to use. This one seems to work a little better for me. It's easier. I just use my square on the silver side because that way I can see it better. This is maybe getting just a little bit fussy. If you're a perfectionist and you only have a few corners, this works. If you're doing a house with a lot of corners, like this house, I have 15 corners. So I'm getting pretty good at this now, I hope. Alright, now let's go take a look at how this goes on the foam. Alright, here's where we're going to put these on. Remember, we're doing an inside corner this time. I'll show you an outside corner next time. Again, make sure that the wide side goes towards the outside of the block. Lay this down. What I like to do is I'll take a piece of cut block and actually just set it down on top of there just to hold it in place. Alright, right here we're going to have an overlap. See here where the second piece comes. Now this is the first part that's a little bit tricky until you've done this once or twice. You don't want to remove all of the paper backing. You're only going to remove the paper backing on the overlap. So this takes a little bit of practice to get the feel, but what you want to do is cut down, but don't cut through the steel. If you cut through the steel, you need to patch it. Look at that later. And once you get the feel for it, it's actually pretty easy to do that. Remove the backing. That sticky is industrial strength. You get one shot at this. The next thing we're going to do is, again, what I like to do is I'll take a piece. That just makes sure that I stay center. I lift it all up. Once I'm lined up in the corner, push it down. And again, this is another spot where you just have to wear gloves. Running along that edge will cut you badly. Alright, make sure that's rubbed together really well. And you see we have these flaps here that overlap. We'll deal with that in a minute. Alright, what I find works best is start in one corner. The next step is, again, we don't want to remove any of this backing here. You'll see why in just a second. I'm going to set this piece down, and now I'm making sure that this is lined up where it goes in the final location. This is where I like using a thinner knife rather than the bulkier one I was using on the cut table. What you need to do is get right up underneath this edge, as close as you can to the underflap, cut through the backing. Again, only the backing. Just a light cut will do that. Fine if you lift it up slightly and get up underneath that corner. Peel that off and get rid of your trash. Now what you see, I'll show this. Normally I don't do this, but you can see that I have a score line there, but I did not cut through the steel. Alright, set this down. Now with your fingers on the underside up against the edge, just gently run back and forth. What you're trying to do is make sure that you get that folded tight up against that corner. And just run back and forth, pressing it tighter and tighter. There we go. Right, so that's all sealed. I'll wait to wrap it over until we get the next piece so that we have this overlap here. Alright. Just like before, set this down in. Make sure this miter cut is nice and tight. Take your knife, run that inside edge. If you find that you need to hold back the steel, what I find works much better is use your knife or some kind of tool rather than your gloves. The dirt from your gloves can get sticky, get stuck to there and makes it hard to release. There are, you can see how I've now pressed it tight. I don't have any bubbles or kinks right along here. This is a nice tight joint. Now I'm going to cut just this corner, fold up and over the overlap. Alright, so you can see here when I cut, I accidentally cut a little too far, so I'll show you how to do a patch. And just taking our time to fold this over, working back and forth is the best way to prevent kinks. If you do get a kink or a bubble, cut it out and patch it. Alright, this is a great place where all of our scrap material can be used. So I need to make sure that I cut all the way to this edge, overlap at least 2 inches. So I'm just going to peel this backing off entirely. I'm going to have to cut this edge a little bit here. I went too far. There we go. Fold that up and over. I have a little bit too much in the back. Quick score. Go. And then on these inside corners, when we do the outside corner, you'll see there's an overlap here. We don't have a problem. But on this inside corner, we've got this area here that doesn't have any steel. All right, so this is where your scraps come in handy again. I've just cut out another piece. There we go. Make sure you fix that really good, burnish it down in. What I like to do is just a diagonal cut, fold that around. So now we've got 2 layers of overlap in every direction. Okay, so now we're going to work on the inside edge. I've turned the block around so you can see. Again, we just take a knife, and you can see again why a thin knife is really helpful here. Just run a light, very light pressure. I mean, I'm only putting about that much. Cut that again. Another thing that I'll do at this point, since I'm working on my cut table, I'll actually move this corner to the outside edge so you can see better. Cut light enough, I didn't even get the backer there. There you go. Again, I find if you just lift up the extrusion just a little bit, it makes it a lot easier to pull this liner. But make absolutely sure you put it all the way down before you start folding it in. Again, just fingers right along that inside edge. You want to keep that nice and tight. All right, now this is an area that's a little tricky. We've got this little bit of overlap. So what I usually do here is I'll actually go ahead and cut this all the way through the steel. Oops. This is where a pair of shears come in handy, but I don't have them right now. So what I've done is I've lifted this out, making sure not to cut through this piece in the back side. There you go. So again, just working back and forth. Hold that up. And here you can see we're having that extra stick out. Helps you can get that overlap. Trim that. Alright, here we go. We've got a completed corner. Normally you would do this in sight in its location. I'll show you here. You can see we got the silver side everywhere. And then we can just set this in place.